director of the Pan American Life Student Success Center. You'll probably notice a big white screen just popped up that this meeting is being recorded. So I'm going to click that. And the purpose of that is for families who are unable to attend our sessions. They may log in at a later date. Connect to that, the purpose of this conversation is to allow lots of room for your questions. We'll give you a brief overview of our services, but since this is being recorded and because some of our services include medical and disabilities, I do remind you to, if you put questions about your student, to keep them rather general in nature, and we can have a private follow-up conversation about anything that doesn't need to be in a recorded meeting. So let me share my screen and tell you more about our space. So again, my name is Liz Rainey, and I have the pleasure of overseeing the Student Success Center. And we are home to 6 integrated points of service for our students. We have a beautiful donor-funded space on the 2nd floor of Monroe Library, and we are excited to fully reopen in person come August 1st. Our services work to partner with students and families as they transition from high school or a previous institution to Loyola and onto their careers. For the purpose of the next hour, we've prepared very succinct overview remarks about our services so that we can allow time for your questions. If you have questions, go ahead and put them, if you have questions as we speak, you can put them in the chat and I will moderate when we're done. If there's time later, you can certainly also ask a question by coming off mute if you prefer. If you are just joining us, you may see a link and I can repost it. There was a question about academic calendars, and I'll get to that after we talk about our services. So succinctly, I can tell you that we are a very busy space. In a typical semester, we will have 5,000 visits, and now we of course add to in-person visits our virtual modalities. We host a number of employers and speakers and events, and we're proud to employ many students in our space, including peer tutors. You'll hear from one of them today, coaches, research assistants, office assistants. And a point of pride for us too is that our students go on for many leadership and research opportunities, and that's the kind of environment we look forward to creating. So let me turn it to my wonderful colleague, Andrea Rodriguez, to tell you more about the Office for Accessible Education.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Liz. Like Liz said, my name is Andrea Rodriguez. And right now, I'm sure we all would love to be experiencing what the young lady is experiencing on our screen, a big giant puppy kiss from a beautiful Labrador. This is just one of the events that we do when we're in person, which we will be in the fall. It is putting together therapy dogs for our students and staff to come in and love on and enjoy. So with my office, I have myself and 2 staff members, and we serve about 12% of the student body. So about 12% of Loyola student body is registered and receiving services as a person with a disability. We provide classroom, dining, and housing accommodations for students that qualify. And we also have assistive technology, and we try to connect our students with faculty to make sure that, that's a good, they have open communication with all staff members on campus that they need help from. We have private testing rooms in our area. We have 4 private testing rooms and then 2 that are just single occupancy. So most of our students who need and are eligible for a distraction reduced environment can feel comfortable testing there. We also help with housing and dining accommodations. So if your student had an IEP in high school or a 504 plan, please contact us as soon as possible. You can reach our shared email at oae@loino.edu, and I will put it in the chat as well. But if you have questions, if you want to talk about things, if you're not quite sure if your student qualifies for services, you can always email us and we can set up a meeting and talk to you about it. One of the areas that connects directly with another service our office provides, the Student Success Center provides, is TRIO. TRIO is a new student support services program. It's a grant-funded program, and students that are eligible to receive services through accessible education are also eligible for TRIO services, and that's just one piece of TRIO. TRIO has some other eligibility items for most students. So I'm the one to talk to you and my staff about any type of classroom accommodations. If you had something in high school, please get a hold of us now so we can prepare for you to come in the fall. If you have any questions, I'll be here at the end. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Andrea. My name is Dr. Paul Bueller, and I'm the Director of Academic Advising and Student Success Coaching. Our office is designed to help your student make the transition to college. Simply put, college is an exciting time and can be a challenging time. This is an environment where students have to navigate a landscape that they've never been in before. Our office is designed specifically to help your students do just that. We do it in a couple of different ways. There's academic advising, of course, which helps students understand their degree plans, the degree requirements, how to search for classes, how to register for classes, and understanding other parts of the academic regulations, procedures, and so on. But what makes our office unique, we're not the only academic advisors on campus, is a success coaching element, in that we integrate what we do academically with all the other parts of your student's experience, from communicating with professors to understanding different resources on campus that can help connect them with their own goals, articulating and defining their goals more specifically, and then understanding, of course, what strategies and resources can get them to where they want to be. In general, we assist students all the way through the first year. It's not a one meeting, one-off kind of deal. We try to see students for the entire year. And I always tell my students that we know if we've been successful because your student will no longer need us at the end of the first year. They'll understand how things work. They'll understand where to go and who to speak to. And so with that, I'll say that I'm open for your questions. I'm sure you might have many about schedules and scheduling and those kinds of things right now. But I'll be around the whole time, of course, to answer your questions at the end. And so I'll turn it over to the next group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Rowe, and I'm the director of OWLS, which is our tutoring center on campus. We have quite a few visits each semester. As you can see on the screen, 1,000. So we are a well-used center. We offer free peer tutoring, and we employ about 30 plus students to help us tutor. And usually those students are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, although occasionally we'll have some freshmen. This fall, we will be offering both in-person and online tutoring, but it will mostly be in person. And as you see on the screen, we have an array of subject areas, math and science and writing and languages. But if your student needs help with something a little more obscure, we're always trying to help meet that need too. And we also offer study skills as well. Well, that being said, I want to turn it over to one of our student tutors, Amelia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in finance and accounting. I'm one of the OWLS peer tutors, and I personally specialize in economics, accounting, and business analytics. I've been working as a peer tutor for about a year now, for 2 semesters, and even as a tutor myself, I still take advantage of the OWLS tutoring service just to get the opportunity to talk to upperclassmen or students who have already taken a course. And really, it's a really valuable resource here that's meant for everyone, not just students who are struggling. And on top of subject tutoring, we also have study skills tutors who are a great resource for time management, organization, and even communication skills. So we've got a really great team here, and I look forward to answering any questions you have for me.
Hello, my name is Jill Boatwright. I am the director in the Career Development Center. Thank you for being here. In terms of services that we offer students, we offer all 4 years. So from major to career exploration, to job and internship searching, to graduate school exploration and application. We also invite employers to come to campus through career fairs, employer of the day tables and panels. And I'm excited to take your questions.
So with that, and again, we kept our remarks rather brief so that we can really invite your questions. So let me just unshare. It's easier for me to moderate. Give me one moment. And go in order. And again, oh, Paul, you just wrote a very long answer to that question. Okay, so there was a question. Do you just want to? There was a question about math and English placement and when that takes place.
Sure.
Paul.
As many of you may be aware, Loyola went test blind this year. So in order to obtain admission, students didn't need to submit their standardized test scores, either the ACT or the SAT. In years past, of course, we used those test scores to do math and English placement. This year, as a result of test blind, if your student is in a major that requires higher levels of math, so calculus and beyond, they'll be invited to take what is called the ALEX placement test by a member of their home department. And that'll be their math placement. By default this year, all students are placing into our standard freshman level English class, regardless of whether or not they've taken a standardized test. There's no way to test out of our basic English class unless they earned AP credit or something like that for the class. But other than that, really the only thing we need to worry about is math placement, especially for students in the natural sciences and some business majors. Other than that, everybody will be placed into our standard math class that serves most of our majors outside of the natural sciences and some business classes and some business majors. Yes, technically IB credit can also apply for testing out.
Well, while we let people type and think, Amelia, if you don't mind, I do love having you here and just thinking back to, you know, I know you had a transition that didn't include orientation, but what are some of the things that you kind of wish if you could go back and tell yourself now, what might you do differently, or what would you suggest like a younger sibling coming in?
Yeah, I actually have a younger sister who's thinking about going to Loyola, so I'm definitely in that position. I really wish I knew more about the Student Success Center and just the tutoring center in general. I mean, I was a National Honor Society tutor in high school, so I mean, tutoring is something that I've always done, but I never like thought to go to tutoring in college. And I mean, I even have students who are, you know, in grades above me who just want to talk through a concept or just want to make sure something stuck. And I think, you know, even if you don't feel like you need tutoring, sometimes just talking that through with people is so valuable. Like I do it too, so.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I will brag on the OWLS team that many of our tutors stay with us as soon as they're hired and trained right through graduation and go on for related fields like teaching and research. Well, let me pose a question to Jill. So what would a typical incoming first year, like how would they intersect with your office? What would you tell a first year who might be kind of overwhelmed by all the different resources to be thinking about in terms of career preparation?
Sure, that's a great question. So our office offers a range of services to first year students, from major and career exploration. Maybe your student knows exactly what they want to major in, but they don't know how that would apply to something they will want to do later on in life. Or maybe they have the end goal in mind, but they have no idea how to get there. So we navigate a lot of those conversations with first year students, whether it's about kind of their interests, their skills, their abilities, and how that applies to different majors and careers. We offer free assessments along the lines of personality, interests, and skills to try and help students identify different options if they need them. We also work a lot with students just throughout that exploration process. So engaging in career fairs to start to begin to learn how to talk with employers or to begin to make sense of what types of options are out there for them after they graduate. And then, of course, beginning the conversation about resumes, internships, just how to gain experiential education experience, whether in college. About 72% of our undergraduate students engage in formal internships at some point in time while they're in college. But about 95% engage in some type of experiential learning. So that could be internships, shadowing, research, lots of different ways to start applying their skills outside of the classroom. So we begin to have those conversations with students because finding an internship or a job doesn't happen overnight. And so beginning that conversation in the first year is an ideal time.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, it's a couple questions. My son's going to be a freshman this year at Loyola, and he's majoring in journalism. So I guess one question is what to expect. Like I just saw the gentleman talk about the standard math. Would that be part of his math for journalism, where he would do the standard, or would it be more advanced for that? And then my second question is what you were just saying. I guess I heard you right, where you would help students be placed in some type of job or something in their major. Is that something what to expect from there?
Sure, I can just continue on the internships and job conversation. I'll turn the rest over to Dr. Paul because I certainly don't have all the answers in terms of math. But our center, the Career Development Center, works on a liaison model. And so your student would have a career coach that is specifically a liaison to students in the School of Communication and Design. Your student would have an internship requirement in order to graduate. All students in the School of Communication and Design are required to do an internship sometime during their college career. It's part of their degree program. And so we would work with your student to begin to explore what their interests are and how they want to apply that to an internship experience. The timing in which they want to do their internship. Do they want to do it in the fall or in the spring or in the summer? If they want to go back home or into a major market for journalism. So we would navigate those conversations. We have a job and internship board called Handshake. Over the course of the year, about 30,000 different opportunities are posted in that board. By employers, some alumni that are all seeking to specifically recruit Loyola talent. So there's no lacking for opportunities. We also do niche job fairs and internship fairs that are related to specific majors. So specifically with the School of Communication and Design, we do a creative careers fair as well as creative careers week, where we talk about a lot of job and internship opportunities specifically within the realm of journalism, advertising, performing arts, music industry studies, those types of things. So those are some of the ways that we would help your student identify either one internship or multiple internships over the course of their time here at Loyola.
Okay, thank you.
And to your
Paul, could you clarify the curriculum question? Yeah.
math question. For all of our majors in the humanities, the social sciences, the fine arts, journalism, mass comm, anything out of the natural sciences and some business programs, there's only one math class they have to take while they're here. And so, yes, it is a standard math class.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
So yeah, for a journalism student, it would be the default math class being placed into.
All right, great.
So there's a great question from a colleague at LSU. Hi and welcome. So for 16 years, this person saw students ruin their GPA their first semester, especially students placed in chemistry, math, and biology together, and felt that if students were advised properly, they could be more successful. So there's a lot in this that I want to break down, and I agree with you. I mean, so students' first semester GPAs is one of the strongest predictors of their success by way of college graduation. So we care deeply about how a student adjusts and having the right schedule. For that reason, Paul's team is already reaching out to students next week. For that reason, we build proactive relationships with students as they come in, and we want them to take advantage of all of our resources like what you heard from Amelia, is that we very much try to message that, you know, we're not here, don't just come to us because you're struggling. Come to us from the beginning, learn what's available, make a habit. That said, there are some degree programs that are just more rigid than others. There's no really better adjective I can think of than that. Paul, could you clarify a scenario where a student would end up with chemistry, math, and biology in the fall semester, and why that would happen?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a tough question to unpack because we certainly do have some students who will take 2 out of 3 of those things in the first semester, maybe not necessarily all together. We do try to avoid putting students who don't need to move on to something like a calculus 2 or higher in a math in the first semester. But our natural sciences, especially chemistry, do require calculus eligibility in order to take their basic classes. So like Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, things like that. And so hence the importance of the math placement. To make sure that they are math ready for these classes when they go in. Many of our natural science students are pre-health, meaning that they have the goal of going on to medical school or dental school to become physician's assistants and other things like that. Given what we need to do to prepare those students for the MCAT exam or additional sort of standardized testing for moving on to graduate or professional school in those areas, we do have a fairly tight curriculum to get them into the classes they need by their junior year when they typically take those tests. So in some cases, not all, students in the natural sciences will have a tighter biology and chemistry regimen than we might expect, than a student who's just majoring in, say, just biological science generally, as opposed to pre-health. But yes, we do try to manage those expectations as much as we can. Beginning next year, there's going to be a dedicated pre-health advisor to help students with that process. And of course, my office exists to help students understand the trade-offs and the strategies for being successful in that coursework.
Full disclosure, I was enrolled in all 3 of those classes freshman year, and I withdrew from one of them. However, that just makes me a more empathetic student advocate. So let me explain a very important question about technology and what you all have access to as parents and how FERPA works. So FERPA is what guides privacy policy at the institution, and that is what gives you access to your students' financial and academic records. I want to be clear, however, there are still places on campus, including aspects of accessible education and counseling, that are guided by HIPAA, which is medical privacy, and that is a different level of privacy. For FERPA, if your student logs into LORA, and by LORA, I mean LORA, Loyola Online Records Access, I just sent you all the links. Your student can grant you access. Your student can also technically pull your access to their academic record. This is a wonderful time to have a very candid conversation with your student about your expectations as they go on to become a college student. I think it is very reasonable to say, I would like access to your record for this reason. I want to know, your daily schedule. I plan to check your midterm and final grades, and I want to know what's going on. If your student is a financial dependent on you, which many students are, this is where you pay tuition. This is where you access the 1098s or whatever it is when you file your taxes. So you generally will need access to this portal. I'll explain to you the different times that we communicate and post information there. The easiest way for a student is to your student logs in and grant you access. That's sort of the cleanest process. There is on the student records page a form that you could fill out and print out. That's just like a lot of extra steps. But we see families as partners. And for that reason, you will get a weekly email through communications, but myself, many of these team members here, Dr. Alicia Bork and Dale and folks in student affairs, we craft the weekly messages going to parents depending on what's going on. So we might highlight preparing for a hurricane. We might highlight a mission to ministry event. You will hear from our office around the 3rd week of this semester when we run a process called early warning or early alert. That's when we ask all faculty, not just first-year faculty, to let us know of any concerns about academics or attendance. And that's our way of capturing students who should be connected to our office or other services who may not have done so already. We know this is an overwhelming transition. There's a lot of students who also just bristle at the concept of asking for help. And so for that reason, we sometimes say words like, you know, we're going to partner with you, we're going to support you. You know, it's silly not to partner with all of the wonderful resources here. But we use that process to identify maybe a first-year student who's missing, who has attendance flags in 3 classes. We're going to make sure we get that student's attention. And we don't stop at an email. You know, once, you know, we'll send the email, then we might send a text message. If the student's in Beaver Hall, there are scenarios where we might send a resident assistant or someone to check in on the student, just say, hey, like Nancy, I'm worried. You know, some of your professors are worried about you. Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? And that's the part of the small community that you're joining. And many of those students of concern come through a committee called the Behavioral Intervention Team, BIT. And that's where we would bring up concerns ranging from the student is feeling homesick to a death in the family to academic or other adjustment issues. And that committee includes folks like myself, Andrea, Dr. Paul, Friends in Student Affairs, Campus Police, Residence Hall, counseling, and we all get together every week just to make sure that we're addressing any students that we're worried about. So let me go back to that. So as far as FERPA and Laura is concerned, is that any questions about that before I turn to the next one?
I have a question because I'm the one who posted that question. When my son enter at Loyola, he'll be a freshman, but he's still a minor. Do I still have to have him authorize this release? Because he will only be 17.
Yeah, we got this question at noon and I tried to research the answer to be precise. Paul, you just unmuted? Did you happen to? It's cleaner to have your student just alert you because it's a good conversation to have. But Paul, do you know something more about the legality of it?
According to the Department of Education, that the FERPA transfer of, to students selecting you, in terms of receiving their information, either happens at the age of 18 automatically or when they enter an institution of higher education, even if they're still a minor. We're trying to confirm that with our student records office, but again, according to the Department of Education website, when your student matriculates here, the right to release that information to you begins.
So I'll speak up really quick. I work at a community college where we have high school students in dual enrollment, and it absolutely applies as a college student to those high school age students. So
I was going to just add that exact same thing because I work at a community college also.
Oh, fun. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just cleaner. I mean, I just think it's really a helpful conversation to have sometime between now and August. Like, what are your expectations? What are you going to do if your student says, hey, everything's fine, but you log into the portal and your interpretation of what you're saying is not fine? It's good to have this ironed out. Or it's a point of pride, like, hey, you're doing great at midterm. Like, how do we sustain this? But there's an important question from my colleague at LSU. What percentage of students return after their first year? That is, we traditionally call that the retention rate. That's the number, it's based on national standards. It's the number of freshmen who enroll who return the following fall. Our 10-year historical average is 80%. 80% of the freshmen who start in the fall, and it's only based on a very specific definition of full-time freshmen who start in the fall who re-enroll the following fall. And that has gone up. Our record retention year was 85%. Last year, we retained 82 or 83% of the students during a global pandemic. I can assure you it's a metric that we pay close attention to, but it's one that there's many complicated reasons. For instance, I know some of the students who are not coming back this fall, and for some of it might be mental health, it might be fit, or it might just be coming far away isn't working. But we're really authentic in our support and making sure that that student finds the right fit and the better fit for their journey. I do think this has been, obviously, coming off COVID. I'm really excited to kind of get back into those human connections because that's really where our hearts lie. I mean, we're all kind of people persons, so that's important. But if you have more questions about those data or some of the things that we do, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation. So there's a question for Jill. What are the career options for student majoring in neuroscience? Ooh, I like that.
Sure, good question. So I think with a lot, as with a lot of our majors, you can go into any number or any range of fields. Specifically with neuroscience, you'll see some go into research, some go into education. We've seen others go into consulting or HR. And so it's really about navigating those conversations about interests and aspirations.
Thanks, Jill. Let me, there was a great question from Angelique, I think earlier, and I think this is a useful resource. If y'all are planners, here is the academic calendar for the fall. And this is helpful. I think this is where you can be a real part, not just a planner, like, oh, this is when I need a flight, but this is also where I think you can be a partner with your student and say, hey, I'm looking at the calendar and it looks like midterm grades post today. Or, hey, did you know that your 11 o'clock class was canceled because of Mass of the Holy Spirit? I mean, you can be really like a helpful partner, because sometimes students, I wouldn't say this is always on students' minds, right? Like we have lots of information and it's coming in different directions. So I think this is a really healthy place for families to support their students. But it's also just helpful to know, when is my student going to be home, you know, depending on your planning. I also had I do want, while you all keep processing, I do want to clarify what TRIO is, and just ask Andrea to clarify, because I do want to make sure if your student qualified for IEP or 504 plan, if they had extended time, I do want to make sure you leave this conversation with a deeper understanding of what changes, because there's a switch. Let me first explain to you that TRIO is a new, oh, sorry, my bad. If I talk and type, I get backed up. So TRIO, we are the recently new recipients of a federally funded grant called TRIO Student Support Services. Many institutions, so now that I know I have a bunch of higher ed colleagues here, you probably are familiar with this. This is a federally grant funded program that will serve 140 students who meet one or more of the following criteria. First generation, meaning neither parent graduated from college in the United States. Low income by way of eligibility through the financial aid office, and or a student with a documented disability. And that would be, that would be through our Office of Accessible Education. So if your student, if we are aware that your student meets some of these criteria, keep in mind, we don't yet know, most likely, unless you have disclosed to us, if your student has a disability. But if we know maybe that your student indicated their first gen, you may have heard about this program. We are currently recruiting participants into the TRIO program, and it's a subset of our office with intense 4-year services around intensive advising and workshops and services. But we are actually all co-located and only a few doors down from each other. So we're developing a network, but it's a new grant and we are recruiting participants. So if you have heard about it, take advantage. But let me turn it to Andrea, just so that y'all understand what changes, because I think this is one of the most important transitions as this applies to you and your student.
Thank you, Liz. So earlier today, I had the pleasure of visiting with about 15 students from Lighthouse, Louisiana, to talk about transition. So what we talked about was to make sure that, when you're in high school, everybody's doing things for you. Everybody knows what you need. They're providing books in the format that you need. And everybody, all the faculty and teachers need to know exactly how much time you get on your exams and where you need to go take your exam. In college, you have to seek out services. We cannot provide them because we're not aware. So the student is an adult and they do have to contact my office to make an appointment to meet with one of my accessibility counselors, so we can determine eligibility and then determine college appropriate accommodations for you. So it is different in the fact that now the student has to be able to tell us what they need. And we're very good at pulling out information from students about what they might need. But the more they can tell us of what actually worked for them in high school and what they're going to need at the college level, I'll highly recommend meeting with us sooner rather than later. We're available now, so you could get that out of the way. Another thing that we see happen is sometimes students don't want to use anything different when they reach the college level. So they don't want to associate with any person that, you know, in the office that assists students with disabilities, but this is the time that you need it. So we highly recommend determining eligibility, going through the process. It's a two-step process because we'd rather you have what you need and not need it than the reverse. So again, it's oae@loino.edu, but your student needs to reach out to us and let us know what they're going to need at the college level. Thank you.
So there's a great question. Is there a program to transition students who are coming from online school back to a traditional school setting? You know, I mean, right now we're brainstorming, right? Like the $1 million question is like, what do we do differently this fall? Like we've had this unique year. We've all been working and learning online with some successes and some, you know, growth moments, right? I wouldn't say there's something specific. I mean, we do have a number of workshops. All first year students will be assigned to an advisor coach in Paul's unit. And we will have a series of workshops that cover topics ranging from citation and MLA and APA to how to communicate with a professor to managing anxiety. And we'll do that one in partnership with counseling. Is there a specific, you know, because I would imagine most of our students have had a mostly online year. I mean, I'm making an assumption, but I know that based on my K-12 experience that my little ones got prioritized over the high school ones, right? So the little ones got back and the high school ones, but that's just what I know of the K-12 setting. Is there someone else or a more like a specific service? Because I do think actually almost all of our students will have this degree of, oh, wow, it's been a while since I learned like this, but based on our interviews and assessment data, our students are really excited to go back to learning together. I mean, I think, you know, like as Nancy alluded to, I mean, I think we did wonders in transitioning our services, our tutors tutored online, but there's just something about body language and clicking and just getting a break from the screen. You know, and I can tell you that myself, I'm a doctoral student myself, and I've had to make like many adjustments for how I learn and read and get breaks from my computer. But does someone else have more to add to that? I mean, I think that's something I'm thinking a lot about is more, but I think this class will have a lot of unity in that feeling of like, but there are going to be things that are great. I've seen great Zoom advising meetings. I have seen a member of Paul's team, because we observe each other, make the students share the screen, show them how to use the platform, show them how to run an audit, and really teach the student how to navigate our technology in a way that may not have worked in person just the same way. So I hope to hold on to the good, but go back to the human work of supporting students. But does anyone else have more to add to that?
Ms. Rainey, I wrote that question in. My son actually been on online school since 6th grade.
Oh, okay, that's different. I'm sorry. Okay.
Right. And then what I'm saying is that he was like in the blending learning. But what I'm finding out with my other son, who goes to Xavier, they're so excited because they'll be around the corner from each other. We watched the struggle with him transitioning from online school back to traditional, and we're trying to get ahead of the game for him. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because he's been in there for a while, online learning. And then the other son found it really difficult getting back to traditional, opening the textbooks and reading it. So we really wanted to get ahead of the game with him.
Sure.
I would just say to encourage your student to use a Student Success Center.
Okay.
These resources, all of them are really great resources to connect with people who have been working student facing for a long time. And I think we have quite a few students who come in, you know, they'll come in once a week, sometimes for different services. But I think if you can just encourage him to use those services, he may be able to have a nice transition, especially tutoring if he's like, ooh, I'm having a trouble adjusting to this classroom situation. And just sitting down with a peer can be so helpful, especially like an upper class man or woman who has been through school. They know the ropes a bit and they can help them out. So not just for homework questions, but also just for like, you know, like, hey, where do I go for this? Or, you know, how do I navigate that? So that would be my sort of general answer to that question.
It maybe sounds crazy, but can parents shadow their child the first couple of days while they're in school?
Probably, to be honest, I don't think we could have extra parents in the classroom. I do think there are students, I'm looking at Andrew, there might be a student who has a shadow by way of an accommodation, and we would make that plan. But I would be happy to chat with you more one-on-one and just kind of get to the root of the anxiety or the transition that we could address in a proactive manner. But I do think there are students who stay around campus for a while and just sort of check in with their student. But I think I sense your student would feel a little weird if you were in the classroom. But there is going to be a parents' weekend. You're right, Miss Amy. Parents' weekend will be announced in August. It will be sometime in the fall. I think they're probably just waiting for the latest guidelines on gathering and events.
I just had a comment for Miss Williams. One thing you can encourage, and you can even do this right now, if your son is already registered for classes through Laura, L-O-R-A, you can go ahead and pull all of his syllabi and review the syllabi with your student to make sure that you have the right book that's recommended. Make sure he understands that the syllabus is kind of like a contract and a calendar of what's going to happen on what day, so that they're prepared. If you're going over chapter 2 on a Tuesday, you want to make sure that your student has read chapter 2 prior to. So that's one really good way to help your student, is to kind of just check in and make sure that they're organized from the beginning.
Thank you. That's one thing he is, organized. Could have given him that.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to have your support. I also know that some of the anxiety for students I get to know is just actually finding their class, so I think that could be productive. Like, okay, because here's one weird thing about Loyola, like we're in the Monroe Library, but there's also a Monroe building. I mean, who would think that? But to us, it seems normal. But just knowing, okay, 408 Monroe is actually on the 4th floor of the Monroe building, not the library. And so I think that can be really helpful. And that's something that traditionally happens during Wolfpack Welcome. Isn't that right, Dale? I don't know if you're there, but where students actually physically walk around, like, okay, this is what Monday, here's where I'm going to go. And we don't have a huge campus, but it always feels huge in the beginning, Do
it the Sunday before school starts. Their orientation leader will walk them around campus and show them where things are. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me pepper Dr. Paul with a more common question while you all just process. And one of the most frequent calls we get is like, where's my schedule? How's my schedule? I want to change my schedule. Like, that is, to go back to the thread of questions, that dictates a lot of your student's experience. So where does the student find their schedule? What do they do if they want to change it?
Well, there's a multi-layered question. So not all students who are deposited have schedules right now. We prioritized building schedules for students who had not just deposited, but submitted their registration survey through their admissions portal in May and June. Beginning in July, all deposited students who don't have a schedule yet will begin receiving schedules on a rolling basis. So important to understand, my office doesn't build schedules for students outside of a very narrow exploratory studies majors program. So student schedules are being built by faculty members within the home department for each student. As soon as those schedules are built, they're supposed to receive an email from that person, usually the department chair, introducing themselves and inviting the student to a meeting or a phone call where they can talk more specifically about the schedule. Our office is going to begin reaching out to your students in July. So all deposited students are going to be put on a roster, and they are going to hear from their advisor coach in July. They can certainly talk about their schedule. They can certainly talk about changes they might like to make to their schedule in their meetings with their advisor coach. But in many cases, we will refer the students back to their faculty advisors to discuss those schedule changes in more detail. And so that's roughly the timeline we're looking at right now. If your student has already received an email, or if they want to check to see if they have a schedule, like all other things we've talked about today, the portal is in Laura. So the student can log into the student services in Laura. You can potentially log into parent services in Laura. And among the many selections you'll have to choose from in there will be current schedule where you can view schedule by days, times, and specific classes.
I have a question. I worked at LSU for 16 years. I don't work there anymore. I'm in private practice as a therapist. However, when I reference students being placed in very difficult courses in one semester, what happened, there would be no more courses left for some students by a certain point. Students were registered for courses in depending on when they came to orientation. So for example, someone that attended session number 1 would get a pretty good schedule, whereas someone that attended session number 6, there was nothing left. Classes were full. So this is where you saw students in chemistry, biology, math. And I just remember I worked in the Career Center, and I would always ask, let me see your schedule. What's your schedule like? And some of these students didn't stand a chance. So what does Loyola do to, now don't get me wrong, I understand some courses, like if you want to go to medical school, if you want to do engineering, there are set curriculums for those majors. What does what does Loyola do for other students just to help them have a more balanced schedule, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. And I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, we've never done registration like that because that would just create inequities that would make me really uncomfortable. From what I heard from Dr. Paul, is that we registered students on the basis of submitting the questionnaire. Is that what exactly is it called, Paul? The
questionnaire survey.
The questionnaire. So those students have already got a schedule. So if your student hasn't done the questionnaire, that could be a good place to intervene. But we're adding classes. So I'm now on the teaching schedule as of this morning for a first year seminar, as is another advisor. So the schedule is not set in stone by any means. It's an evolving animal. So we are still recruiting folks depending on where the need is. And so for instance, there was a call for more classes for first year seminars because of not everyone had a first year seminar. So we've added a few new classes. So we do try very hard to add where the demand is. We'll even track wait lists to see, does this justify opening a new section? But it's mostly handled in the dean's offices who oversee adjunct hiring. But I think Paul's team in particular notices the trends and will say, here's where, I think we need more classes. So we do our best to make sure that it's not the first students who get the best schedule. That said, I do think, and maybe Amelia, not to put you on the spot, but when you do come later, perhaps you remember that, because I know you shared with an earlier group that you came later. Were you still able to get into the classes that you needed?
I was able to get into the classes I needed. I think especially with majors like business, there are larger class sizes just by virtue of there are a lot of business students. But I didn't get my schedule until I set foot on Loyola for the first day. So, but it wasn't a hassle for me. There wasn't any issue. It was never, I wasn't taking way too much than I needed to take. So I think it should work out.
Well, there's a question from a parent of a student in the honors program. And I know that's Dr. Peterson who oversees that program. Would she already have a schedule? What would be the best way? How are the honors schedules handled?
The honors program builds honor student schedules. So again, I can't check because you can email me, out of this to let me know, but without knowing who your student is, I can't confirm a whole bunch of things. So if your student has completed a pre-registration survey or questionnaire, they should have a schedule by now. But if not, then they're probably going to be receiving one in the next few weeks. But again, that will be a schedule made by the honors program.
That's Dr. Jonathan Peterson. I can find, he's wonderful. He's in the philosophy department. But also I think too, it's as critical as the schedule is, it does scooch around, and there are some students who might, for instance, you have until the first Friday of classes to add a class, and typically the second Friday to drop. So I have seen some students attend some classes, attend an extra class, just get a vibe, and then finalize their schedule within that first week after they've attended a class. It's unnerving because there's books involved and things like that, but sometimes the student really needs to go visit a class. And I've had students come out of a class and say, this is not a good fit. And then you move things around. So it is a little bit of a moving puzzle, but it does work out. And we make sure that students have a full schedule before the end of the drop period. Else? Well, you all have asked some wonderful questions, and you have an equally engaged group of parents who joined us earlier today. So we see you as very much part of the Loyola family, and do stay tuned for Parents Weekend, but you will receive weekly communication with just general updates. This is when this is happening, and it'll feature different events and students, but I'm always happy. I put my email in here. Again, if you just even email, if you can remember nothing, or like you're on your phone, you can't remember anything, write it down. You can always email to success@loyno.edu. That goes to our office manager, who will field it to someone. And we typically hear from people who are like, I remember some lady during orientation, and that's fine. I'm happy to be some lady who then gets you to the right place. But if you have any specific questions or more personal questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking in this group format, now you know our faces and the scope of our work, and we would be delighted to connect with you. To
Remember
make sure
this
your
name,
students
Liz Rainey. Liz Rainey.
Yes. Yes.
Just write it down. Liz,
Just
L-I-Z, Rainey, R-A-A-N-I.
R-A-I-N-E-Y, yes. But really, you really can. I mean, I've been at Loyola for over 10 years, and I have learned a couple things about where to do things, but we're so committed to students, and we are sincerely excited for the energy and for what will come this fall. We have a wonderful class coming, and we are actually really excited to be back in person and have fun things like coffee and donuts and dogs licking our faces again. So yes. All right, well, with that, I wish you all a wonderful evening. And again, this is just the start of a conversation. So happy to connect with you or with any of the directors. And Amelia, thank you for being a wonderful student representative. You make us proud. So thank you all.